cozy farms, doggy afterlives, ghost sponges, and one game that isn't even confirmed for Switch. Let's sort out what's actually worth your time. Let me start with a game whose pedigree beats most big-budget releases. The cozy pixel farm you're looking at was built by former Fable developers from Lionhead, and the studio, Pixel Count, is chaired by industry legend Ian Livingston. The hook isn't crops, it's generations. You plant a magic acorn, grow a family tree, and when your character dies, you keep playing as their kids, while the whole world ages around you. Run a blacksmith, a potion shop, or a tavern, fight dark fairy tale creatures, and watch villagers actually remember your good deeds and your pranks. It's been on PC since late 2022 and picked up more than 10 major updates along the way, so the Switch version arrives fully grown rather than half-baked. It's a 1 GB download, runs on Switch, and by backwards compatibility on Switch 2. And $25 feels fair for something this deep.
Look at this place.
These stories, they hold mirror.
Creepshow is a game based on the cult horror anthology that Romero and Stephen King kicked off, recently revived as a Shudder series. It's made by PHL with Dread XP, the folks behind The Mortuary Assistant, and it's a classic point-and-click at heart. You follow a kid named Danny and his friends whose ordinary day at the mall curdles into a nightmare as they dig into what happened to Danny's father. Nobody expects one of the year's freshest action platformers to come out of Madagascar, but here we are. Kalanoro is made by Red Riquetta, a studio founded in 2021 by local developers, and the whole thing is a love letter to Malagasy folklore, music, and art, with a soundtrack from actual artists off the island. You play a fluffy little creature called Kalakali, who a very questionable prophecy has tasked with toppling a witch dictator named Reneni. And the way you do it is gloriously silly, by starting a band. Combat leans into that absurdity, mixing hair-based powers with household junk like slippers and a frying pan, and between levels you cruise the biomes in a rusty bush taxi that doubles as your base and tour bus. The whole thing runs on pure good vibes, which is rare in a genre that usually takes itself seriously. Funny detail about this one. Its full PC launch got pushed back nearly 2 weeks specifically to dodge Silksong, with Korean studio Sunny Side Up openly admitting they didn't want their little witch crushed by one of the most anticipated games of the decade. Now it's finally reaching Switch. You play Ellie, an apprentice witch who shows up at a rundown witch's cottage with a talking hat named Virgil, and slowly turns the ruin into a home by helping villagers, brewing potions, exploring the forest on a broom, and filling out an encyclopedia of local creatures. It's worth being clear about what this isn't. Despite the obvious Stardew Valley comparison the pixel art invites, there's no real farming here, and the focus sits on exploration and warm little slice-of-life stories. So if you came for a vegetable patch, you'll be thrown. But if you came for atmosphere and a slow pace, it's a bullseye. This one waited so long that the backstory is practically the plot. It was dreamed up mostly by a single developer going by Claudia the Dev, along with a tiny team called Skinny Frog, funded on Kickstarter back in 2020, aimed at 2022, and it only quietly shadow dropped its full PC version in May 2026 at a 92% rating. The pitch is Stardew Valley crossed with Slime Rancher and a pinch of Pokemon. You move to a farm in a town called Clover, and the whole thing hinges on blobs, round creatures that hatch from eggs, crossbreed into dozens of varieties, and don't just fight but also work the farm. A turtle blob can water your crops daily, a cow blob gives milk, a bat blob helps you catch bugs, but overwork them or forget to feed them and they'll simply refuse. Battles use an active time system where an incoming hit can knock you back down the bar, adding a defensive layer to your timing. The pair behind this grim pixel farm are worth knowing. Neverway is made by Vancouver studio Coldblood, co-founded by Pedro Medeiros, the pixel artist on Celeste and Towerfall, and by Isadora Sofia, who left a senior engineer role at Microsoft and wrote the game its own open-source engine. Funding comes from Outer Sloth, the fund set up by the Among Us people. The setup sounds almost cozy. A woman named Fiona burns out, quits her job, and starts fresh on an island farm, and then accidentally becomes the immortal herald of a dead god.
Patrick?
Thanks, SpongeBob! There once was a king who ruled the sea and
The situation here is unusual. This game already came out on Switch 2, PC, PS5, and Xbox back in November 2025. And it's owners of the original Switch who are only getting it now, almost a year later, which is a gap worth keeping in mind. Purple Lamp develops it, the same studio that gave us the Battle for Bikini Bottom remake and the Cosmic Shake, so they know this sponge well. The main mechanic is swapping between SpongeBob and Patrick on the fly, with the platforming and puzzles built around that duality. And the story spins out of a feud between the Flying Dutchman and Neptune that floods Bikini Bottom with ghosts. But let's be straight, the reviews landed as merely okay. People liked the color and humor, but knocked it for having noticeably fewer worlds than Battle for Bikini Bottom, for feeling familiar and for bugs.
across Bikini Bottom. Soon may King Neptune come to rid this. Here I go!
If your idea of a good time is an armchair, a cup of tea, and using your head instead of your reflexes, here's a tidy little find. Case solved. The London Files from Minimal Games is a cozy noir set in 1960s London, where Scotland Yard pulls you into a string of murders. There's no action at all. Each case is built as a closed logic puzzle in the spirit of classic zebra riddles, where you can't guess your way through. You have to interrogate witnesses, catch contradictions in their statements, and assemble the picture from details that don't line up.
Oh, davla.
Movie games are a gamble, and so is the reverse. But Kong, Survivor Instinct was a pleasant surprise when it launched on other platforms back in the fall of 2024. It's a 2.5D brawler with Metroidvania bones, an official MonsterVerse story from Polish Studio 7 levels set right after the Godzilla vs. Kong film. You don't play a Titan, you play an ordinary guy, an oil rig worker named David, who wades into a wrecked city to find his missing daughter while Kong, Abaddon, and Tiamat brawl overhead. The clever part is that you can turn the Titans to your advantage. A Monarch prototype called the Orca lets you nudge their behavior and clear paths through the rubble, while you fend off mercenaries led by an old villain, Alan Jonah. Reviews for the original were surprisingly warm, with particular praise for the level design and the small personal stories of survivors you meet.
Alan Jonah!
Sometimes the premise is so faithful to the source that you can't argue with it. John feeds Garfield spinach lasagna made from a recipe by some chef Monday. The cat drops into a deep sleep, and now he's stuck in a nightmare full of vegetables and sugar-free candy, escaping the only logical way, by eating mountains of lasagna to wake his taste buds back up. It's a 3D platformer from French studio Osome under Microids, with 3 worlds, 40+ levels, and 3 costumes: turkey, surfer, and cowboy, each granting its own abilities. There are so many farming sims right now that a new one has to justify itself at the door, and Farming Camp tries to do that through story. Dutch publisher Soedesco puts it out, Inner Fire Studios develops it, and unlike most of its neighbors, the emphasis isn't an endless sandbox, but a narrative. You play a teenager named Alessandra who arrives at Evertree Summer Camp and competes to become its best young farmer. The world is hand-drawn in warm, top-down 2D. Every character has a personality and a farming specialty, and the routine is broken up with mini-games, from racing the clock against pests to chopping wood and cooking. It's a strictly single-player game, no co-op, which in a genre where everyone's reaching for shared farming is more of a minus. I need to clear something up straight away, because there's a lot of confusion around the name. This is a Natsume game, the company that kept the old Harvest Moon name after splitting from Marvelous, and historically their entries have come out weaker than Story of Seasons, so a little skepticism is the default here. That said, Echoes of Teradea is pitched as their most ambitious project yet, and, importantly, the first Harvest Moon on Switch 2. The formula has stretched well past the usual crops. They're promising an open world, a mist creeping out of the Forest of Echoes, beasts that roam at night, and guardian spirits you have to restore. The headline edition is an animal companion system, where each animal isn't just a buddy, but a tool that can smash obstacles and open hidden areas, plus campsites for resting, expanded movement with vine climbing, and puzzles at glowing statues. Tower defense fans, this is for you, with the caveat that it isn't quite genre orthodoxy. Tower Dominion from Studio Parallel 45 under Forever Entertainment is a roguelike tower defense whose central idea is that you don't just place towers, you sculpt the terrain itself. By laying tiles, you shape the landscape, carve choke points and lethal corridors, and funnel waves of aliens into kill zones. Each run starts on a partially generated map, and from there, you mix buildings, weapons, perks, and doctrines into builds that suit your style, with 3 factions, 30 heroes, and a mode for people who find the normal difficulty too soft. Picture Pokemon crossed with Slay the Spire, and you've more or less got Montabi, a creature-collecting roguelike deck builder from Studio Mankibo under Akupara. You tame creatures called Montabi, put together a team of up to 3, and fight on a tactical 3x3 grid, playing cards for their abilities. There are 22 starters, more than 500 cards, and here's the interesting bit: each evolutionary line has its own deck, so your playstyle is tied to who you raised. A neat wrinkle is choosing your trainer. There are several, each with a different approach. One positions the team, one gets in close, one force feeds Montabi to buff them. And that's also where the main risk hides, because the trainer works like the king in chess. Lose them and the run ends, whether or not your creatures are still standing. I'll close with a game that aims somewhere very tender. Puppergeist from Serenity Forge, the same people who published To the Moon, is a rhythm visual novel about the unconditional love of our pets. You play a young witch named Claire who descends into the doggy underworld searching for her lost pup, befriends a demon called Lund, and meets dog spirits, each carrying its own story of friendship, love, and loss. You move the story forward through rhythm games, lifting those spirits' moods. But the real reason to look is the credits. Art direction comes from Nom Nom Nami, creator of Bad End Theater. And the music is handled by Con Gao of To the Moon, Chris Wilson of Cyanide and Happiness, and Kawhi Sprite, the composer of Friday Night Funkin'. That's a stacked lineup for a rhythm game. It's clearly aiming at sentimental tear-jerker territory, so if losing a pet is a raw subject for you, know that going in.